Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flashback Cartoon Hour. I'm your loving bald host with the most from coast to coast, Nick Retroman Lascola. And for first-time listeners, we are a podcast that watch, rates, and reviews classic cartoons. Anything 20 years or older, that's our bread and butter. Joining me today for the first time is our guest, Matt K. How's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you today, Nick?
Good, dude. I've been waiting to have you on the one of these episodes, and I'm so excited that we could do it for this episode in particular.
I'm happy to be here. Also, not happy that I had to watch this anime, but happy to be here.
We'll get into it. Today we are reviewing the post-apocalyptic OVA series, Blue Submarine No.6. Blue Submarine No.6 is a 4-episode OVA series by the anime studio Gonzo. The series is a loose reimagining of a manga of the same name that was published in 1967 by Shoga Kuk. All right, can you help me with this one? I'm glad that I can have someone who actually knows how to do the pronunciations, because me and Santi, one of my other co-hosts, we butcher the hell out of these names.
No, I want to hear you say it first. Go, try. A for effort.
Shoga Kukan. Shoga Kukakan.
Shoba Kublai Khan?
Genghis Khan.
So you almost there. So it's Shoga Kukan.
Kukan. Okay. Weekly Shonen Sunday magazine, which I wonder if it has. So maybe you can enlighten me on this. We were confused by another Shonen magazine, me and Santi, when we were doing original Dragon Ball, and we learned about Dragon Boy and what that originally was like Shonen. So is this Weekly Shonen Sunday magazine, is that like something that Shonen Jump is a branch off of, do you think? Or is that like its own individual kind of thing?
From my understanding, I do remember there being a lot of different versions of Shonen Jump. It's not just Shonen Jump, but you have like Shonen Weekly. You have, honestly, this probably falls under the same umbrella because it has the word shonen in it. If for people who don't know, you have shoujo and shonen. Shonen usually representing for young boys, for kids. However, shoujo, is more for young girls. There's a distinction usually between the two. However, shonen isn't exclusive for young men, or boys alike, but typically this is more advertised for the younger men generation in Japan. So shonen and shoujo, two different words representing two completely different things. Again, not exclusively to each other.
Yeah, okay, because I was always under the assumption that shonen was like teen protagonist getting stronger or just any kind of fighting protagonist getting stronger throughout the series, kind of thing. A lot of fights. Mostly.
Yeah. Typically, honestly, shonen falls into the action adventure anime sort of umbrella. Well, shoujo usually is more seinen, more slice of life, more based around comedy, less around the action, less around the fighting, but that's a stereotype. You could say that's a stereotype at this point because a lot of guys today tend to watch seinen shoujos, not just shonen, although I myself I'm the same way. I'm a battle junkie. I like seeing fight scenes. I like seeing
that's
really
right up my alley.
Yep. So I guess you could say I'm also that, the stereotype who says, oh yeah, I love shonen stuff. I love fights.
What is I used to have a friend back in middle school, my friend Ruth, and she was super into the series called Fruit Basket.
Yep, that's a shoujo. That's
shoujo.
That's a shoujo. That's not a shonen. You wouldn't find that in Shonen Weekly Jump magazine.
That's like a slice of life kind of
slice of life romance.
Got it. So getting back to Blue Submarine #6. This was actually a post-apocalyptic manga series, and it was written and illustrated by mangaka Satoru Ozawa. The manga ran on the Weekly Shonen Sunday magazine from January 8th, 1967 to November 5th, 1967. The manga was later renamed under the title Blue Submarine #6 AO6, with cover illustrations provided by Kazutaka
Mm-hmm.
Miyatake
Mm-hmm. Yep, perfect.
to complement the OVA adaptation. This version was published by Sekai Bonkasha
Mm-hmm.
and serialized in Saban Kansha magazine. The new manga series has been collected into 5 volumes. Do you want to hit like the next 3 bullets?
Sure. So the OVA version was directed by Mahiro Maeda. It was written by Hiroshi Yamaguchi, and the character designs were provided by Range Murata and Takuhito Kusanagi. They were all from Studio Gonzo. However, Studio Gonzo was originally a branch of Gainax. They
Mm-hmm.
broke off of Gainax and created their own studio, so Studio Gonzo. They're best known for Full Metal Panic, the original Full Metal Panic, original Hellsing, Final Fantasy Unlimited, Gantz, Samurai 7, and Desert Punk, as well as Von Dread and a couple of others, but we can get into those later. And
Yeah.
considering they were a studio consisted of former Gainax, you can see the caliber within the animation from series like Evangelion, Neo
Mm-hmm.
Genesis Evangelion. There's a bit of a caliber there. You can see it, even though they are not the same studio. You can tell the art style can reflect old Ava.
Yeah, well, so funny thing about that, the studio Gonzo was created when Shinji Higuchi and other staff members departed from Studio Gainax, like we had talked about, and I found out that he was illustrator, creator, very much into the designs, and that's why you get those monsters. So, like when you think of, I've never actually seen the series Neon Genesis, but I've always wanted to. But I know what the monsters look like in that. And even when you look at the designs of the monsters in Blue Submarine #6, the 2D animation, not like the CGI,
CGI.
like when you look at like Verg or like the shark guy kind of thing, you kind of see that um Evangelion type of like monster design to them, even though they're like smaller in scale to the giant angels from that series. Are they called angels, I think?
Yeah, Angels.
Okay, yeah.
So the OVA series of Blue Submarine #6 aired from October 25th, 1998 to March 25th, 2000. And I never saw it.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
As we established, I never saw it.
This is
And
great that this was your first introduction to this series, because like I remember it from Toonami, and we'll get into the whole Toonami release and all that in a second. But to me, this was so crazy because obviously Toonami was my introduction to anime, and seeing anime, like going off of cartoons, even like the 90s, like Marvel cartoons or the Batman universe, and then going to things like Dragon Ball Z and this, where like the blood is shown and there's like actual like death and like people getting killed. It was like so mind blowing at the time because like I was 5 technically when the series was released in Japan, but it didn't come till I was uh 7, the year 2000. And like when I was conscious and I saw this, I was like, oh, oh my god, it's fucking awesome.
so this OVA was only 4 episodes long,
Mm-hmm.
and the release dates were very spread out. You basically got 1 episode per year.
Yep.
Uh, Leading all the way up to 2000. However, there were 2 episodes in 1999. Episode 2 and 3 both aired in 1999. Episode 2 aired on February 25th, and episode 3 aired on August 25th. So pretty close together.
Still, I feel like that's such a like gap too. That's why I remember this show in fragments before I saw it finally on Crunchyroll.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I was only 4 when this came out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much younger.
The
The main
young
host.
buck.
I'm the young buck here. I'm the young blood, as some would say. But I grew up watching Toonami as well. You know, being a young lad. You know, a young lad. I also grew up watching Toonami still when it was still around. I remember getting home, and you kids might not know what TiVo is, but I would TiVo. You know, all my Bleach. I'd TiVo
Yeah.
Bleach, Naruto. I'd be at home telling my dad, I need this TiVo. I want to watch it. I need to see what happens in the next fight, you know?
So
But
is your memory of Toonami basically like it would air on Saturday nights kind of Toonami?
or I'd catch it early in the morning right before the
Oh,
transition back.
yep.
Because I'd wake up for school and I'd catch the last episode for Inuyasha or whatever would be airing in that time slot in the morning. I'd catch it, I'd watch it, and that'd be so exciting for me before I go to school. I have such fond memories of that. It's such a good time. My parents didn't understand what anime was, but they knew it made me happy, so they didn't bother to tell me to stop watching it. They knew it made me happy, so they had no reason to say, "Son, you can't watch that."
Oh yeah, dude. My dad definitely fed into my Dragon Ball. Mine and my little brother's Dragon Ball Z love for sure. He was all about it. He didn't care, and it was crazy because like I got to witness when I first started watching Toonami, it was a daily block that aired from like 5 until I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9 or something. If I remember, I'm a little fuzzy. I remember watching the early stuff, but then I remember when it stopped being a daily and became a weekly, and it would only air on Saturdays, and like that destroyed me.
So,
but I believe this would have aired when it was still a
daily.
I'm pretty sure
it wasn't weekly yet. It was starting to become more weekly towards the late
Naruto.
2000s. Naruto, like 2000, like 2006ish, 2000, 6ish was around the time frame I recall, but it probably started sooner, quite frankly. But there's another little fun fact, you know, Toonami wasn't the only series at the time. Sorry, wasn't the only channel at the time that you could find, which was Cartoon Network typically. Later on, around 2000, I want to say a little between the tens, there was a channel for Funimation exclusively, and you could actually, if you had cable, you could tune in, and that's how I got introduced to was it Galaxy Railway?
Dude.
And all those little jazzy sort of animes that you never got to see too much of. They'd be airing those. I watched Nabari, all these again, more unknown that people probably heard of in passing but never got to watch.
And I bet they're edited down much less too on a Funimation. I mean, still with TV guides.
Surprisingly, Nabari, you know, not to go off on a little tangent, but Nabari was pretty graphic. People would have their, you know, people would have their bodies twisted because of some abilities, you know, and they wouldn't hold back. People would just die, you know, blood and everything. And I said, wow, this is 2011, 2010.
That's damn, dude. Yeah, I don't remember a Funimation channel. Maybe I was by 2011 to 12ish. I was just about moving to Malden in an apartment. I don't think I was like watching normal cable that much, but that's fucking sick. Cause like to me, Toonami was the one. Like there were other channels, Kids WB and stuff like that, and eventually like Jetix and
I was gonna say Jetix,
ABC Family, but they would edit down their anime a lot, whereas Toonami didn't edit it down too like any nudity I think they would take out, because I don't remember the boobs on Toonami.
No shade towards anybody, but a certain country does the weirdest censorship with white stuff, and I don't know if it makes it worse or better. Who knows? You tell me. I mean, no shade at this country, but when you start throwing white stuff over red in certain areas, you start getting,
Yeah.
a
Or
little
it's like
question.
turning it purple for no
Yeah.
reason.
So everybody's freezing now? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Everybody just bleeds purple like freezing now. That's cool. Yeah, no shade at them or anything, but just pointing out some facts. But so we're gonna be going over how we felt about this. Especially someone like me who has never seen this, never got to experience it. I only experienced it in passing through funny little YouTube clips. You know, do anybody even listen to anime music videos anymore? AMVs? I mean,
Yeah.
I do, and that's why I got introduced to it like 14 years ago.
Oh man, when AMVs were at its most peak on YouTube. Yeah. Yep, good times, good times.
hmm But so Blue Submarine number 6, the OVA, um, also had some games,
Yeah, yeah. Yep,
and
two of them. Yep.
two of them, and I never heard of them. I honestly don't think I would have heard of them.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. Maybe they are Japan exclusives, but I mean, I'm assuming you would probably have heard of Japan exclusives. They definitely never made their way over here to the West.
so from what we read about, the first game that released, if we're remembering this correctly,
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be a prequel to the OVA.
Yeah, that would be Blue Submarine No.6 Antarctica, and that was developed and published by Bandai Visual for the original Sony PlayStation and
Mhm.
released on September 28th, the year 2000. Like you were saying, this game works as the prequel and deals with Mayami Kino, and when she first joins the crew of Blue Submarine 6. And we'll go into who she is in a minute. But she's one of the like four basically main characters because a lot of the side characters in this series fall to the wayside.
And then the second game, which was for Dreamcast, was supposed to be a spiritual successor to the OVA,
Yeah.
which that one came out in the 2000s. Never played it. Never had a Dreamcast. I don't think this would
Yeah.
have even been on my
Yeah.
radar if I had a Dreamcast.
I have a Dreamcast, but the American one, so the Japanese won't work on this, on mine, unless somehow I jailbreak it, but I wouldn't know how to do that with a Dreamcast.
So for those who don't know, this is what the OVA is about specifically. So a brilliant but unhinged scientist who specialized in biomanipulation and artificial species named Zorndike has flooded most of the Earth's surface. Zorndike once lived peacefully with his wife and children in Antarctica while conducting his research. That just sounds stupid, by the way. When the global situation worsened and tensions rose around his experiments, a military unit was sent to confront him. During this confrontation, his family was killed by human soldiers, essentially collateral damage in a politically motivated strike. This event becomes the emotional breaking point that pushes Zorndike to conclude that humanity is incapable of coexistence or restraint. So after the Great Flood, what's left of the civilization survives in scattered oceanic strongholds, constantly under attack by Zorndike's engineered aquatic hybrids, sharkmen, mer creatures, and other bioweapons designed to replace humanity. So to fight back, the remnants of the world's nation form the Blue Fleet, a high-tech naval force. Among them is Blue Submarine No.6, a small but elite crew tasked with confronting Zorndike's forces head-on. A little extra note is that from what we can tell, it almost feels like the OVA ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and it feels like there should have been a little bit more to this.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give you our thoughts on each episode. However, if things feel a little incomplete, it's because it didn't really complete in a way.
Yeah. There's a lot of it seems like
Stories,
which is weird because they had so long in between episodes to like deliver, and it just felt like a lot was missing. And before we dive into that, I do want to say quickly that this series uses a hybrid approach, combining 3D computer graphics with traditional 2D animation, and it is a pioneering example of this technique. It was one of the first ones, and at the time, because I know a lot of people shit on it now. It's, as any old school CGI, it doesn't age well. But at the time, this was absolutely mind blowing to me. It's seeing both at the, like, seeing a 2D go into 3D, go back to 2D, like, it was so rare. Like, I would get hyped when I would see something like that happen in like a Pokemon movie, where like they would kind of do that 2D, but like only certain things could be 3D kind of thing. They didn't do the whole series in 3D. Um,
And remember,
so
guys, this was the predecessor. You gotta remember, this was
yep,
basically the predecessor to a lot of your favorite old Final Fantasy games. So from Final Fantasy 1 to 7, this was the same technology they were using back then. So if you go and watch this yourself and you go, oh, that
yeah.
reminds me of something, that's why. This was what we had to work off of before, not to say CGI got any better, but
But
this
like
is
you compare it to like what Americans were doing with CGI, like Transformers Beast Wars or Reboot. That was a French Canadian show, I'm pretty sure. But like you look at that, and I would say this CGI looks better than that CGI does. But it's still just, I won't say it's bad CGI. I'm gonna call it old CGI.
yeah, it's if we were to rank this purely on, actual visuals, of course this wouldn't be up there, but we're ranking this realistically and we're judging this on the legacy it
Yeah.
has within the media. And
And
this
don't get me wrong either, because I think the 2D animation is beautiful.
the 2D animation, in my opinion, actually looks stellar still. Holds up really
Fucking,
well.
oh my God. So good. So good.
But I would say though, the plot, if you were to read this summary, if you
Mm.
were to actually read the synopsis of it, just this little sentence: Zorndike once lived peacefully with his wife and children in Antarctica. Huh? Antarctica. Huh?
Yeah. So they kind of go into it like briefly in the beginning of episode 1, which is named Blow Up, which we're about to dive into. But like, as as they're kind of walking through the area to find Hayami, who again we're about to dive into. No, hold on. Um, you see like kind of like magazine covers of Zorndike, and he was like the lead scientist in bio, like we said, bio what's it called? Bio,
Bioengineering. Basically,
yeah,
it's like
bioengineer.
it's more like he's a eugenics type of guy. He
Hmm.
understands how to create life and he understands the fundamentals of life in this universe. And that's how you end up in the situation we're in, where you get these
Yeah.
hybrid creatures because he understands how to create new life. A little scary when you think about it, when someone is able to go off the rockers and go, I'm going to make replacement humans.
Yeah, this is kind of like the whole story is basically like the island of Dr. Monroe, but to the degree. Cuz like he's clearly led to be like the most brilliant mind on the planet. And what happens when you piss off the most brilliant mind on the planet? Cuz like he killed they killed his entire family. So in a way, now that I have a family, I totally get like the madness that could come with that. And if you are the most brilliant mind in the world, and you're basically saying, no, dude, fuck humans. I'm going to make my own species and I'm going to just burn it all down and start it all back up again the way I want to.
Yeah, I'm a bachelor right now, which is fine. But even for
Hmm.
me, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Your whole family. just got completely offed for no reason, really. The honest truth is that the whole beginning is just, it was unnecessary violence. It was all for politics.
Mhm.
And we all understand this climate, especially how volatile politics can be. So you cannot
Amen.
tell me that
Yeah,
this guy losing his family due to politics, yeah, I don't want to say he's in the right for it, nor do I want to say he's in the
exactly.
wrong for it. I
Yeah.
get it. It's understandable to lose so much and to become essentially a villain. Very understandable. Very,
But
very understandable.
so when the episode begins, boom, it's already like happened. Zorndike has flooded the planet. I believe he killed about 10 billion people. And this takes place in like the future, so it's supposed to be that like there's still a bunch of humans left, just not as much as before. And I don't know how, but he's mass produced these hybrid chimera, if you will. And there's essentially a war going on between the chimera and the last humans that are still left. But like when you see the scenery, it's like full cities with like skyscrapers completely filled all the way up, and the skyscrapers are just barely poking out of the water. It's basically like a water world.
And, you know, we meet technically our first protagonist, you know. So Kino is, Kino is the girl that you meet initially,
Mm-hmm.
and she was tasked to find Hayami, a legendary pilot that served prior to the mission that they're about to go on. So Kino, she seems very impatient, eager, and brash, a young gun. She seems very eager to get the job done. And you kind of get a glimpse of the world you're in, just through the surrounding backgrounds, as she's going to try and find and meet Hayami.
Exactly.
It's very, very dystopian, very, very much what you would expect if, almost 90% of the world was flooded. And
Exactly. And it was cool that like it like we're in it, like the world's already happening, and it's not like we're seeing everything happen and then like the flood or anything. Everything's flooded and boom, we're here. She's on a mission. She's got to go find Tetsuyo Hayami and bring him back to um Blue Blue 6.
so what's interesting about the way episode one opens up is they really, like we said, they kind of hammer away the desperation they're feeling.
Mhm.
You can kind of feel in the way they're talking. I watched it in dubbed. Nick here watched it in subbed. There was almost
And dubbed.
and dubbed. He watched both. I watched one. So my perspective is gonna be a little bit different. The tone and attitude came off kind of jokey at first because dub acting back then wasn't very serious.
Mhm.
You know, dubbing was a bit rarer back then. So the acting, you can only act as best as you can with a script in front of you. The way they came off kind of felt it was kind of back and forth, jokey. Kino is with her companion. I know he had a name, but from previous shows, he kind of reminded me of Dutch from Black
Yeah,
Lagoon. So
yeah.
I said, "Oh, it's the Dutch clone."
Yeah.
So she's walking with the Dutch clone to
Who's
go.
essentially a jet clone, and you know, I
Yep.
mean,
So
like
my brain was like, "Oh, their interaction is very funny. They interact with each other very fun, with a funny attitude. It feels kind of out of place almost with her attitude talking to him. You know, so it kind of like took me out of the world for a second. But then again, you get another cut forward to Hayami. The man looks lifeless. He
yep.
looks ready to die. You get a quick flash cut of him before Kino enters into the room he's staying in, and wow. You
Yeah, he's
can
passed out. You see like
the
needles on the
drugs, yeah,
floor. You see fucking porno mags like thrown all over the place. You see empty beer bottles. Like this dude is just
ready to
fucking
kick the bucket and die.
yep.
He
Yep.
he he. You can tell, you know, animation and art direction. You can tell when a character has those pitch black eyes. You know, the
Hmm.
way they animate pitch black eyes. You can see. Just you don't even need to hear him talk. You can just go, this guy looks like he's ready to kill himself. You know, he
Yeah.
looks like he's ready for death. He looks like
The
he's just done.
Yep, the reluctant hero. So she basically shows up and she's like, "We need you. I know that you used to like. We need you to join. Come back to Blue Submarine 6 because apparently he's a former uh ship member that left." And she's like, "I know you're still good friends, but the captain. We need you to come back. Only you." Can like lead us to Zorndike, and like basically Blue Submarine 6 has the job of going straight to Zorndike, and like they're like, you're one of the best pilots, you're out there, only you can help us get him back. And he's reluctant. He's like, nah dude, fuck everything, fuck the world. Like I'm just gonna fucking basically he's like what's the word I'm looking for, scavenger. Then like he's like, if or like a mover, he's like, if you, it doesn't matter what they are, drugs or anything, if you want to pay me, I'm gonna move it across the ocean. And she's like, nah dude, we need you to come back.
He's
And
almost like a fence, you know. He almost works like a
yeah.
fence, you know.
Yep.
You got something, you know, you got something illegal that needs to be done. He can do it, you know. He comes off as that type of archetype. The I'm experienced, but you know, my experience got
Yeah,
me here.
they wanted the reluctant hero that like Cowboy Bebop got with Spike, but they were like, let's make him even edgier. And in a way, it was like you kind of hate him. You know what I mean? You're like,
Oh
fuck this
yeah,
guy, dude. He doesn't want to do shit. But out of nowhere, boom, that like whole little area that they're in is attacked by the like creatures that Zorndike created, led by this shark guy named Verg, Verg. He's like has a grudge against Blue Submarine, and he's gonna just kill everybody until he gets them. And so all these civilians are getting attacked, like these giant crab monsters are showing up, and you're kind of getting a sense of like all the different creatures that have been made.
and it's kind of interesting too because you you know a lot of the story can be told through the background, you know, or through the art direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of found, you know, as the scenes were transitioning, I kind of felt like it was a kind of a bit of hit or miss with the art direction they were kind of taking in. It was more specific with the color palette. You know, in more serious moments, the color palette was more warm,
Somber.
somber and warm, which was
Yep.
interesting. You know, that warm palette with a somber tone. But then other moments where high octane actions were happening, it felt very bombastic. And I said, is this supposed to be serious or is it supposed to be sad? Like, I don't know what the vibe is here anymore. Because, you know, when the first attack happens and, you know, Kino and Hayami are trying to get back to Blue Submarine No.6, you get this jazzy acid music playing in the background. And I'm saying, man, this is just Cowboy Bebop.
Yep.
But
The
kind of
whole
feels.
the whole band, the called The Thrill, did the soundtrack to the OVA. I don't know them, but allegedly they were the ones who did like that jazzy music, cuz again, Cowboy Bebop was hitting and they were like, "Ooh, mm, they might be onto something."
It just, for me personally, it kind of felt out of place.
Mhm.
Um, Not because the music was bad. No, God, the music was great. It's just the music in combination to how some of the background and the color palette was presented just took me out of the world a little bit more. because
Mm-hmm.
when you get those sometimes serious moments, it would kind of reel it back. It kind of like pull you back immediately
Yeah.
with some like goofy gag or or an explosion that leads into another action. It just felt out of place almost
See,
sometimes.
I liked it when it was just with the action scenes, like the jazz with the action scene, like the jazzy rock kind of
Yes.
worked with the action scene, but they were doing it in other areas where I get what you're saying. It just like wasn't fitting.
Yeah, again, no shade towards the music
Mm-hmm.
as a whole. The music was great, but it almost feels like they weren't picking the soundtrack correctly for certain moments. And to me, that's kind of a negative. That's often a negative when you just willy nilly throw a soundtrack in there. Again, maybe there is a reason. Maybe if I listen to the soundtracks on each separately by themselves, maybe I can pick out what type of theme they're actually trying to play. Chord strings, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, just hearing that in moments of, it, it'd be like someone playing marching band music as you watch a man OD on, drugs. And I'm going, wow, okay. Whoa. Like,
Yeah, what
don't think I need the fanfare for that. Don't think I need the fanfare for this, but thank you. So to me, a
yeah.
lot of the time when they played the jazz acid rock, I'm just going, I kind of feel like this is not the time to be playing acid jazz, or acid jazz rock and roll at the same time, because this moment kind of feels sad, somber, and more desperate. It feels more desperate. You would think the music would be more desperate, but the jazzy style of music kind of feels more, again, jovial and fun, which I guess in a sense, when you think about Hayami's character, guy who has nothing left to lose, I guess jovial fun kind of makes sense, for him, just to find maybe a little bit of thrill in life or death, maybe,
I
I
do
don't know.
find it funny that they with Hayami they let him to be like this big like he's such a good pilot and all that, and like we don't really see him pilot that much. Like in the first episode we see him pilot one of those like little the little small ships that I forget what the name are that come off and like basically become their own little ship, and he does that in fantastic manner. That's when he blows up a bunch of the enemies and kind of shows how good he is. And then at the very end of the episode, after he shot down one of the enemies, basically it spits out this mer woman, and she's like kind of all in this goop, and then all of a sudden she's like gasping for air, like she can't breathe because she's a gill woman on land. And to show Hayami's character, he picks her up, and even though she bites him to the point where she draws blood, and he puts her in the ocean, and she kind of like waits for a second and then swims away. But the action scene was pretty fantastic with him like jumping through everything, blowing it all up, and then that happens, and that like leads into episode 2. But what did you think of like the action shots? Were you a fan of that?
I think, again, if we were to take this and put it side by side with other animes today, this thing would fall short 100% of the time. But
Yep.
if we talk about this under a microscope and talking about the time it's in, we're talking about when this was made and what it's trying to do. You could say this was some of the best action you would see from,
Very fast paced.
very fast paced, especially from an OVA that you wouldn't expect it from,
Mm-hmm.
because this was never like, I don't think maybe you would expect this to be like a shonen, or an action show, because just the way the
Yeah.
tone is set up, it feels more like a serial experiment lane-esque type of show, or you know
You almost like expect it to be a mecha show,
yeah.
kind of a way.
And so that's the Gynax, I feel like, in them.
Hmm.
It's the Gynax showing, but I think it's very good. Again,
Yep.
I will give the CGI a lot of flack. There's two sides of my brain working here. We are spoiled with wonderful CGI today. Dragon Ball Super being a great example. All
Yeah.
CGI'd. Really good. But if we're talking again about this under a microscope in a contained time frame, yeah, the CGI slaps. It reminded me of the first time I saw Sid from Final Fantasy VII pilot the airship out of the center of the Earth. It gave me such a vibe from Final Fantasy VII. And I said, wow, what?
Yeah.
Amazing. And again, to be fair, these guys did make Final Fantasy Unlimited. They helped out with that. So I could see the inspiration and I could see the passion they had for it because, CGI is CGI. It's
Mhm.
never going to beat 2D animation, but the way they blended it, the way the action scenes played out initially in 2D, and then you get some really really good 3D shots in CGI of him piloting. It kind of looks like a sea moth from almost looks like a sea moth. A very you see him pilot in CGI, and people would go, "Ooh, that looks gross," and I said, "No, that looks good. Still, it's
Yep.
fluid. It looks very
Yeah.
fluid.
Exactly, dude. That's
It's
the perfect
fluid."
word. So fluid.
But again, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, wow, this is the best CGI. Because no, that's not
Yeah, yeah,
that's not
yeah.
true. I will
You have to be a fan of the 90s to appreciate what you're seeing in there. And if you're a fan of modern day anime and that's all you've been like
then you're spoiled. You
exposed
you
to,
you're
yeah.
spoiled. You're essentially
Yeah.
spoiled.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think for me, the action scenes were good. I think the pacing in the first episode felt off. The way the color palette, the diegetics felt was off. But other than that, I
Really
think
the pacing throughout the first two episodes and we're going to go into episode 2 also in a second, but really I feel like the pacing in both these episodes are just kind of weird.
kind of quick. It feels
Yeah.
like they're trying to move the plot along a little too fast.
Mhm.
Like you said, episode 2, it didn't really slow down at all. It just kind of kept going. But again, if this was like a full 12 episodes, maybe that makes sense to move the
Yep.
plot along a little faster. But this was only 4 episodes. It was an OVA, so we knew it was going to be short to begin with. But
Mhm.
this felt even shorter than what a normal OVA would be like. Um, but yeah, kind of, summary of episode 1 for me was it gave off a lot of, Ava vibes slash Black Lagoon. If anybody's
Mhm.
seen Black Lagoon, kind of reminds me of Black Lagoon, the way they said there's no heroes almost in this, even though people say, Blue
Yeah.
Submarine #6 are heroes. It kind of feels like there's still no heroes.
Yeah.
It felt like there's no heroes in this. And then you kind of get that Casshern Sin and almost like a World War of the Worlds type of vibe where these random alien creatures, because you don't know at first that Zorndike is making these guys. In the synopsis, it
Right.
tells us, but when you first
Right.
get introduced, you don't know who these guys are. You just know they're the enemies and they flooded the
Mhm.
planet. That's all you know. And the Mer lady, we'll get into her name later, came out, I was like, this is just War of the Worlds almost,
Yeah.
War of the
Yeah.
Worlds-esque, where they first killed the first aliens. And, in order for them to survive, they need to be in those mechs. It helps them breathe. So
Yeah,
kind of felt
exactly.
like that. Very, very,
It
very interesting.
it is a little funny though because like she does in like a different episode 3 and we'll go into it, but like she's out of the water sometimes. Maybe it's cuz she can jump right back in anytime, but like you know what I mean when she's sitting on the
Yeah.
debris and singing the
Yep,
song and
yep.
stuff. So you're kind of like do you need like water to
Uh,
breathe or
yeah, like what, like, and that's a whole nother thing we talk about. Like, it kind of feels like continuity gets lost as you start doing the episodes where you start questioning things a little more. Like, okay, why can some fish people seem like they can breathe just fine on,
yeah.
you know, or in episode
Especially
4?
because they had so much time in between. If it was like a quick, they were releasing it every couple of like maybe 3 months was the next like installment. I could be like, all right, well they had a short amount of time and like that's where you cut. But like they literally had a ton of time in between each release, like half a year at least. You know?
Again, we can't be too harsh on it. It's old for a reason. It's one
Yep.
of those things where it's, as Nick said, if you grew up in the 90s, you gotta appreciate it. good example is Astro Boy. Does Astro Boy hold up to today? Not really, but
No.
it's a legacy anime. You can't really
Yeah,
judge it on the same
exactly.
standard. This is how we're trying to judge this. We gotta we gotta be objective about it, but we also can be very subjective because as fans, we all like anime in our own way. So
Hmm.
subjectivity and objectivity is gonna come into play here. But the way we view it is, yeah, this is a legacy. This is a legacy anime. We barely got anything like this back in the early 2000s, so of course we're gonna like this. Nothing wrong with that. So,
Yeah, and these kind of and Astro Boy itself would eventually get a 2004 remake. So like when you get these retellings or remakes, and you have to remember what they're dealing with as the source material too. And the manga wasn't that much. It was only 3 volumes. So, you know what I mean? They're trying to create all what they have out of basically such a small little thing.
mhm. And now I'd be interested, at the end of this, we can, go into a hypothetical, but I'd love to know later on what your thoughts would be about this maybe getting a remake.
Oh, I'd be down.
Be so
100%.
interesting. But
Yep.
going into episode two, the episode two is called Pilots, and you know, you you would think learning more about Hayami that he's a pilot, and you
Mhm.
get to see him pilot that this episode feels a little, the naming kind of seems interesting. But Blue number six ends up going deeper into enemy territory. And what I noticed specifically about this, which was interesting, was when the episode opens up, it kind of opens up and picks back up where we left off, which was Blue number six was engaged with the enemies.
Mhm.
And you hear another submarine, Blue number six isn't the only submarine, right? Um you hear another ship called the Narushio or Narushiro. I'm pretty sure I actually might have misspelled it. The Narushiro um, show up to help the Iga, which the Iga is actually the name of Blue number six. That's the actual ship name for the ship they're in. It's called the Iga, and you hear the biggest cliche come out of them, which is, let this old dog show you how it's done one last time, essentially. And you
Yeah, yeah.
go, he's gonna die, isn't he? He's not gonna make
But
it out of this.
the whole thing with this episode is like with it being named pilots, you kind of so you're learning who the other members of the fleet of the blue fleet are, but none of them really
Matter.
stand out that
They
much.
don't
You
matter.
have the horny dude that hits on the chick. You have I think you learn of a
The
couple
straight
of the
man,
other members. Yeah.
the straight man. You meet the straight man. You meet the stereotypical, not to be mean, the stereotypical boss woman. She's more
Yep.
strong, independent. You meet her. It's almost like you meet the peanut gallery because their input
Yeah.
doesn't matter at the end of the
Yeah.
day. It's there almost like for comic relief in a sense, because you get a lot of cutbacks throughout each episode back to them. Since Blue number six is essentially the Blue number six as a sub is basically a character as its own. They're kind of the
Yeah.
main characters as well, but like you
Yeah.
said, they don't get much more expanded upon about them. So why do we
Yeah,
keep cutting it?
you only really get out of the blue crew. So you have Kino, Hayami, you have Kino's friend
Partner
there from the beginning,
Dutch. We're
partner.
gonna call him Dutch. We
We're
get
gonna call him Dutch.
Dutch.
He had something.
He had a name. He
It's
did have a
not
name.
Dead Mouse. He had a code name. It was something Mouse, I'm pretty sure.
Dead
But
Mouse
I
5.
I wanted a Dead Mouse 5. We didn't know. You think Daft Punk being having their anime was
Wow, they use code names like that.
and then you learn of the 10-year-old girl who was like working the sonar.
Mhm.
Um and she's a psychic for some reason, and they
She
don't really
she
explain her power.
she's actually kind of important though later on. We kind of learn why
Yeah,
she's
very much.
she's actually really important to the sub, which is kind of funny because again, you meet the peanut gallery, then you meet her, and you go, "Oh wait, she's actually important." Wait, I should pay attention to this. But so they start engaging with the rest of Zorndike's forces, and the Narushio or Narushiro ends up going down. They actually end up sacrificing themselves to save the Iga. Um, and so the Iga actually manages to get away, and they go to a place called the Blue Dome. The Blue Dome is, you could almost say the Blue Dome is the last bastion, for humanity, where every
Mm-hmm.
other country meets to come up with plans. Basically, the UN. You can view it like
Yeah.
the UN at the end of the day. They're the last bastion to stop Zorndike, and this is where you kind of get a little bit more about who Zorndike kind of is, because there's a meeting being held between the rest of the countries, and at one point, Zorndike ends up interrupting that with a message telling them how humanity essentially doesn't deserve to live,
Yep.
and humanity took everything away from him, but it's cryptic. His message was very cryptic, and it kind of feels like there was more to it, and that's kind of leads more into episode 3. But from episode two's perspective, that kind of just stokes the flames more. It's almost like he's trying to stoke the flames more between both factions. But again, there's an undertone to the way he said it.
Yeah, because at the same time, you're seeing while you're seeing Blue Fleet, which is the last fleet of humans on the planet, you're also seeing at the same time the Chimera fleet and Verg, and the way how like he found out Mutio, which was the name of the girl that Hayami saved, the mer fish lady that has tits. And the fact that like he comes up and he's like, I heard that. So you already see she's pretty beat up, and that's from her sisters beating her up because she interacted. She got her life saved and she got the shit kicked out of her from it. Then Verg, who's like quite clearly like wants to kill all these humans in honor to like get praise from Papa, who's Zorndike. But Zorndike is telling him, like, just stop what you're doing, come home. Basically, kind of showing that, like, no matter what Zorndike says, Verg is going to take his fleet and do, like, kill all these humans because he thinks that's what Zorndike wants.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of showing that Zorndike doesn't have control of the creatures that he created.
Yep. And a little warning if you do watch this by yourself. Episode 2, there's a bit of essay in there, quite frankly. It's a little creepy, actually. Verg, essentially, after Mutio shows back up, Verg essentially essays her, and it's kind of.
Is that how you took it? I took it
I
like
took it
he
more.
beat the fuck out of her.
Yes,
Actually,
that too.
I thought he killed when the first time I watched it. I thought he killed her.
So, the dub did not do it any favors. Kind of going back to the dub. The dub did not do it any favors.
He was weird though. I get what you're saying because like he was behind her, like grabbing her shoulders, like biting and licking her ear.
The way I took it, it felt like you kind of get the feeling that they're supposed to be a thing in a way, like weirdly they're supposed to be a thing, and that kind of gets more into episode 4. But the way it kind of comes off is like abusive boyfriend is mad at girlfriend trying to do the right thing, boyfriend mad. That kind of what it came off to me. Maybe it was essay, maybe it wasn't, maybe there was more to it. But again, the English dub did it no justice. It made it sound worse. Like, and I mean, I felt uncomfortable listening to it, going, wow, okay, like I feel uncomfortable. Like that's good acting on them. If I'm going to be 100% honest, good acting on them.
It was creepy, yeah. In both versions I saw, I took it as like he was being creepy. He was told that she didn't even do anything. The Hayami picked her up and put her in the water. She didn't like do anything yet, but he just ends up, the sisters beat her up, and then he like viciously beats her, trying to get information of like why did you have this interaction, what's going on, like you tell me everything.
Yeah, I mean, it again, kind of like we don't need to like stick on it, but yeah, I don't know, I think it was just the way it was presented, because even in episode 1, kind of like cycling back, the English dub, when Mutio falls out of the amphibious mech for the first time, she was gasping for air, like you said, but in the English dub, it was moan. It wasn't gasping, it was moan. It was
Yeah.
highly sexualized in the weirdest way, and I'm going, I don't I'm like I was thinking, um, you okay, lady? Because it went on for, I don't know, like 3 minutes. That was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going, wow, like, okay, like, again, good on you for acting that. Not gonna take that away from you, but I think it's just the difference in the way it was presented in English versus Japanese. It was just it felt completely different because I did hear a little bit of the Japanese side of things. I want to hear what Verg's voice sounded like because this kind of got
Mhm.
into my critique of episode 2, where Verg, you know, it's as you said, Verg is gonna disobey Pop because that's what he believes in. He believes that this is the right path to make Papa happy, which is, that's commitment fallacy. There's a fallacy in that because you don't know what people actually want to make them happy. But the way Verg talks comes off, and I told you this before, was kind of feels like a Super Sentai monster,
Yeah.
kind of feels like the main villain of a Super Sentai going ha 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 ha.
Yep.
And again, for something that feels very serious, it kind of felt out of place, kind of going back to the music or the way the color palette was set up. This kind of felt like the same thing for me, where maybe because the English dubbing, um, the way they had to translate it kind of made him feel like a Power Ranger villain, essentially.
Yeah, it was for me. It was the layering of the two voices because Verg has the voice where it's a really high pitched voice and a like kind of a deeper voice talking at the same time. So there's kind of an echo to it, but that's where like you get that almost like Rita Repulsa, like or whoever the Bone Dude is from Power Rangers,
Mm.
Zed.
Zed, Lord
And
Zed.
yeah, you kind of get like that, like you said, that kind of goofiness from it when he's supposed to be like scared. He is. It does make you scared of him in a way, but I feel like in a different way than they intended.
Yeah. And again, nothing wrong with that. I think it's just a choice. And I'm not gonna stand here and be like, that's the
Mhm.
wrong choice. It's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It's a choice that was made. I mean, heck, if you really want a good example of a choice, just go watch Ghost Stories dubbed. That was a choice. That was a choice.
That's definitely a choice.
So I'm not
They
gonna
went
sit
full
here.
into it.
Maybe that's the problem. I kind of wish they committed more to the ha ha ha, I'm the big bad villain, and then gets Team Rocketed off the screen. You're like, well, and Verg is gone. you
If they
know?
made a full like actual like adaptation of the original manga, I could picture them going that route.
Yeah, but
Like that goofy 60s kind of almost Disney-esque like look to it.
mhm. But yeah, Blue Dome ends up getting blown up actually. So,
Mhm.
you know, you learn more about you don't learn too much about it, but you learn that Katsuma, who is the friend of Hayami, actually ends up living, the first engagement they had with Zorndike's forces.
Yeah,
Um,
so that was like a big thing. So you didn't know why Hayami left Blue Submarine 6 to begin with, and it was because when he was on the ship before, him and Kayama, how do you pronounce his name again?
oh, Katsuma.
Katsuma, that was it. When Hayami and Katsuma were both members of Blue Six, they disobeyed orders, basically went to go confront Zorndike on their own, and they got blown up. And basically, well, they were underwater, and Katsuya like hit the inflation thing on Hayami so that he would shoot up because Katsuya was stuck, right?
Yeah,
He was like
Katsuma was Katsuma. Well, they were in a point where they had no way to get back up properly, so Katsuma ends up hitting essentially like the emergency,
because
foot.
Katsuma was stuck. I think his foot was stuck or something, and he
Yeah,
couldn't get out.
and Hayami wanted to stay, to go down with him, but he was like, no, 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 no. You have more to live for, and Katsuma ends up essentially Katsuma saves Hayami, but Hayami, you kind of get more of an understanding why Hayami feels the way he does. He
Mhm.
almost has survivor's guilt. This is when
Yep.
you start realizing he has basically survivor's guilt. And as the as episode 2 moves along, you start to realize that Katsuma is actually still alive, which
and was experimented on too.
and you find out he is a fish person from Bikini Bottom.
Yep.
You learn he's
from
actually from
he's from Rock Bottom.
you learn he's from Rock Bottom. And
I I miss you.
but so for some reason, and we don't get really a big reason why he was turned into a fish person realistically, other than he was experimented on. But you learn that
Maybe just to get the info on. I was thinking about that, and I was wondering if they just like were trying to like get info of Blue Six from him.
yeah, maybe. Again, it's very unclear because it was so short that you only hear about you only get the interaction for like a brief second. That's when Hayami is like walking through the halls of Blue Dome, and
Yeah.
they kind of mock him in a way, and then they indicate that the thing in the tank was Katsuma the whole time, and that's how you kind of get that flashback, and you're like, wait, Katsuma's still alive, and then you realize he's a fish person from Bikini Bottom, especially Rock Bottom, and it's such a brief moment. Again, it kind of gives you a quick glimpse of Hayami's character in more in depth, but you don't really get any more than that other than, yeah, Katsuma is now a fish person and Hayami's mad about it, and you're going, okay, that's great. Anything else? And you won't get more about, again, some things are weirdly not explained. You get more into it in episode 3 about Katsuma and why they kept him alive, but yeah, Blue Dome ends up getting attacked. And Blue Dome ends up getting destroyed, actually. So the last bastion of humanity ends up getting blown up. And that kind of is all I got from episode 2. Episode 2 kind of felt more like a blur to me. It was so quick that all I got was, yeah, they're at Blue Dome now. Blue Dome's blown up.
Yeah. Well, essentially, it was the fleet was going over what their final like strike was going to be and how they were going to attack on different ends. And that's when they got blown up, right as they were like meeting to discuss their final like assault on Zorndike, because like each submarine that's in the fleet has its own job to do, and you see it in episode 3 and 4 when like the major fights start happening.
So what did you think of episode 2, though? What was your thoughts about episode 2? Like, how did you feel about the pacing? How did you feel about the pacing? How did you feel about more character development? Did you feel like there was enough there for you, or did you feel like we kind of breezed through this one too? Again, for me, it felt like we breezed through it again. Episode 2 kind of felt like another quick type of episode where we get a little bit of exposition, but then things just kind of kick off and kind of...
Yeah. It's, for me, it was like it's probably my least favorite of the 4. Again, essentially, like I said, you're just kind of learning about who the other pilots in the fleet are, and in reality, half of them are just fodder. So, like, you kind of care a little bit when they die because they've done like such a quick little, hey, and they run that ship too, kind of thing.
Okay, going back to it, I agree, because again, when the episode first opens up, like I said, I have the quote right here in English. So the Naruto, like, he literally says, "Let's show them just what an old boat can really do," and then they proceed to die.
For me, like, the action in episode 1 was a little more like thrilling for me,
exciting,
kind of thing. Yeah, it was more of an exciting. Not saying that like this episode is bad. It's just my least favorite of the group. And when we get to the end, we're gonna do our letter rating of F to A+, and we can officially tell you guys where we're gonna rank it. But yeah, go into episode 3 because this is one of my favorites.
I think episode 3 definitely. So episode 3 is called Hearts, and this is where things really, you get more exposition dump, you get more action. This is where things from episode 3 to 4, I feel like is things where really start to take off for me, where I was actually starting to feel more invested in the matter.
And luckily, these are only like half-hour episodes, so you could really sit down and get through the whole thing in about 2 hours, which is like a movie nowadays. So it's getting through those first two episodes is quick, especially since like we can skip intros, skip into the next episode right away.
So the war is essentially in full tilt now.
Mm-hmm.
And Hayami actually ends up getting stranded. So a lot of the episode actually focuses more on the inner conflict with both the people inside Blue Submarine No.6, so Kino as well. Because again, I didn't mention it, but in episode 1, you kind of feel like there's something more to Kino's character. She seems, again, very impatient about things,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Zorndike's forces. And
She almost does like a little kind of like I won't call it a full 180 with like her turn of her attitude, but she like when we first get introduced to her, she's very kind of like polite, like she really wants to like schmooze Hayami to get him to come back to the crew. And then quickly like she'll tell you like how she feels and like where to go and how to get there if she's like mad at you or something. And you don't like pick that up at first when you first see.
mhm, exactly. So you kind of you get a better understanding of who she is throughout episode 3. You kind of start to realize that, yeah, kind of like how Zorndike's family was eliminated by essentially political powers,
Mm-hmm.
her family was taken away by Zorndike, kind of like the cycle of hate. He lost everything, and now she lost everything. But Hayami ends up getting stranded, and what's interesting is this is kind of where we get more of the exposition dump about him and Katsuma. And so you get a lot of flashbacks to him and Katsuma together. Mutio ends up showing back up too. And so we get a little bit more of her and her
Because
interactions
he's
with Katsuma.
we should say that he's floating in the middle of the ocean
Yeah,
on debris.
he is actually stranded. Like he is 100% stranded.
In the middle of the ocean, nowhere to go, surrounded by salt water, and that's where Mutio shows up, and she like starts bringing him fish, and so that he can like cook. And
that was the cutest scene ever, by the way. I gotta say,
yeah.
Oh my god, her popping out of the water, going back in, grabbing a fish, looking like a golden retriever puppy, going.
Dude, she really did. That is a good way to put it. She really did. Like you felt, and it shows that there is a way for both these species to like coexist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just we won't get into it until 4, but you kind of start to see that they're not so different. They all have to eat to survive. They all have familial bonds with each other. You kind of start to learn that, and you kind of start to see that barrier break down between Hayami and Mutio, where Hayami at first was kind of like, "You're a pain, go away, stop singing." But then he starts to kind of understand more about who Mutio is in that sense of like, oh, she's just like a little girl. She doesn't know any better. She's a child essentially. And he starts to think to himself like, why should I be punishing a child for the deeds of someone, for the deeds of someone else? Like
exactly. And then they get attacked. So all Mutio's sisters like find her and they all start crawling up onto the debris, and then like a bunch of like different of those crab monsters show up. Oh no. I think it was a different like creature shows up. One that also could swim too. And they're all like about to attack, and that's where Hayami's like, "Oh, the cycle of hate. This is never gonna stop. It's just kill, 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 kill."
mm-hmm.
And then out of nowhere, they get spooked by like a loud noise, and then this is where one of my favorite um uh creatures, the whale.
The Musaka.
The Musaka. Thank you, dude. I was literally just struggling trying to think of the name. The Musaka.
Mm-hmm.
Those, dude. I'll let you jump into it, but oh man, I was a fan of even in the American dubbing, which made him kind of sound a little goofy.
Yeah, Ricola.
Yeah, seriously.
That's what he said.
Like
honestly,
I still was a fan of him.
So the Musaka are like whale creatures, and you get ironically
they're like ships and whale creatures at the same time.
They're essentially like almost like how we have giant carriers. The Navy have the carriers. You kind of can see the Musakas almost like the same thing. They're battleships mixed with like being carriers. Ship carriers. They can carry
mixed
people
with sperm whales.
Sperm whale as well. Exactly. I mean, they do look like a sperm whale.
Yeah.
But essentially you learn that the Musika's purpose was to roam the seas and destroy cities. That was the whole purpose at first. But Musikas at the time really never thought about it. All these creatures actually have the ability to think for themselves. They have sentiency. They're like us. They're people at heart. They can think, and they can think whatever they want. So the question eventually popped in this Musika's head of, why are we doing this? Or why? The question of always why, which is a very, that's a very divisive question to ask yourself, is why? Because why what? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Or, just why? And so he asked Papa this, or Zorndike this specifically, and he actually you get a flashback of Zorndike talking to, at first I thought was a boy, but it wasn't. It was a young girl, so an anthropomorphic looking little girl named Shu.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's like part cat or something, right?
Yeah, part something.
Some fuzzy
animal. I promise I'm not a furry. But you get a flashback of him essentially teaching Shu philosophy in a way. He's essentially, Papa is trying to teach these people, philosophy. Like I said, he's trying to give them the ability to think beyond themselves and think for themselves. And you kind of see that in Shu, and I tried to figure out if this was a real book, but it was called the Chronicles of Garia, or the Chronicles of Gaia. I'm not too sure what the translation was there realistically. I didn't read it in Japanese, but it's almost like Papa is trying his best to give essentially his sons and daughters a sense of self, not to just listen to what I have to say. Don't, like, the saying, do as I do, but don't do as I do. You know what I mean? Like, do as I say, but don't do as I do,
And don't take it to an extreme, because what I really think it boils down to is he's trying to make this new species to replace the human race. Mm-hmm. And so, in a way, he wants them to be able to think and act for themselves and have like a higher morality than humans did. But then, like, he slowly sees that, like, it's basically just the same.
Yeah, he comes to this little realization that no matter what life is put into this earth, it almost all kind of comes back to the same thing, which is violence, greed, or a sense of that, a sense of violence, greed, because you kind of realize that if you start with nothing, then there's nothing to get greedy about, and you kind of see that in the way these people are living, that they don't have high technology like we do. There's a more sense of tribalism. However, though, I mean, you kind of get back to it after the Musika gives, the backstory and the background of himself, and, his kind.
And his whole explanation is that Hayami saved Mutio.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
You saved Mutio.
Be at peace. So he gives that explanation of, like, why he's saving him, which is really, it's kind of interesting, because again, at first the Musikas were designed to essentially be destroyers,
killers.
Killers. They were there, and he mentioned it earlier. Nick mentioned this earlier, that 10 billion people have died, and a lot of it is due to the Musikas sinking so many cities themselves. They're the reason so many cities were destroyed. And so that's why you learn that 10 billion people died at this point.
Yeah, you got the mass flood that killed a ton, and then you got them going in and taking out remnants. Like, it's just fucking crazy.
But you cut back to Blue Sub No.6, and they were essentially tasked to make the final push to Zorndike. But when they're making that final push, Verg, you get another cut to Verg, who comes up with the idea to have the Musika that Hayami is in and Mutio are in to get intercepted by them. And this is where you start to see the power of the Navigator girl, who the life of me can't remember what her name was.
Oh, I have it. It is Mei Ling Huang. Meilinghuang.
Okay, so yeah, Mei Ling essentially can communicate with other or sense other of the I don't know what we're calling them, the fish people, the people of Bikini Bottom.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
essentially can
Like she's the sonar girl. She's like in a room, that classic like outlaw star kind of thing where like they take that one girl, put her in the room, and she's like surrounded by all the sonar stuff, and she can like feel and think thoughts. And
but she can connect to Katsuma. That's what you see, is that she's able to sense the other creatures because of him, and she senses that Hayami is inside that Musaka, but they still make the call to blow the Musaka up, and the Musaka actually essentially sacrifices herself to keep both Mutio and Hayami safe.
dude, like that actually got to me because like he sent out a signal and she didn't pick it up, and they just shot at it and killed him. And Hayami, as he's like evacuating, was like, "You knew this was gonna happen." And
Yeah.
he's like, "I thought I have danced, I have swam with dolphins."
So yeah,
I
his
forget what
explanation
his
was
yeah.
the Musaka said, "I have seen every possible part of the sea. I have gone to swim with every aquatic creature."
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is too is he explains how Musakas were actually prototypes. They weren't full-fledged. Again, they never named what these creatures actually were, but apparently Musakas weren't Musakas aren't full-fledged. They're
Mm-hmm.
considered prototypes. So he he kind of almost had no reason to live anymore. And he makes that very apparent, but you start to understand that Musakas were very lonely creatures, and that's another thing he emphasizes, that the Musakas were very lonely. They had almost no one, um, which I don't get how that relates to him particularly, but it was a little note I picked up from, because again,
Yeah.
I was like, what does your loneliness have to do with you dying here? Like, buddy, like
And
what?
wouldn't you be with other musicas? Like,
Yeah,
they're not
so
friends. I don't know.
like this,
There's that inconsistency.
yeah, like you said, it hit, but then he gives his explanation, and then I'm like, but that's not a good explanation. Like, that didn't explain anything, you know?
uh,
I was like, that didn't explain anything to me. um,
but that brings us into the episode 4, and I'll have you go into that one.
oh, one more thing about episode 3. If you're someone who
Sure.
really likes sound diegetics, the music they play in the background is super powerful, because throughout the whole thing, Mutio is sad and screaming over the Musika's death.
Yeah.
However, they take that scream of hers and they use it as a constant background in the music. So her screams become blended in with the music they're playing throughout the rest of that scene. So you'll subtly hear it, her screaming.
And it kills you every time.
Yep. And it just becomes blended with the music, because that, to me, obviously was a clear musical choice to
Yeah.
have that, to, again, besides the reasoning, it was very sad, impactful. That was a very impactful moment.
Yep.
And again,
Most in the
most
series,
in the
if you
whole
ask me.
series. I agree,
Yeah.
100%. That I definitely would agree with that. But if you really like, listening for music and listening for like messaging, that was powerful to put her scream blended in with the end of the episode music. So powerful. So if you like that stuff, go give that a listen to, especially in episode 3. My gosh. But episode 4, um is Minasoko, or the depths. um, he for some reason in Japanese they call that Minasoko, which don't know why.
Yeah.
Don't know why. That's beyond my understanding. But essentially, keep it brief. Episode 4, Blue Submarine number 6 ends up reaching a certain point where they're making their final push. However,
Yeah.
Verg is essentially making a death run themselves at Blue number 6 to stop them. And you find out that Blue number 6 actually had another task, which was if they can't reach Zorndike, they were to launch essentially nukes at the area he's staying in to eradicate them.
Yeah.
Which we forgot to mention, though, in episode 3, Kino does end up saving Hayami. And towards the end of the episode, Kino makes the choice to say, listen, I trust you. I trust your decisions. Let's go find Zorndike ourselves. I'm going to follow you to do this.
Yep.
And so they disobey Blue number 6's commands to not engage with Zorndike and to not leave. But the captain, who's
kind of does like a wink and a nudge. He's like, "You disobeyed orders. I want you off my ship. But by the way, the fastest way would be that there."
And by chance, we might have prepared essentially a speeder to take you to this one thing. But I might be taking a break at this moment, so I'm not on comms. I'm not paying attention. But gee willikers. Oh golly gee. But it's a good cliche. I love that cliche. It's one of my favorites.
Oh dude, I meant that he was a G.
Oh yeah, he was a G. That man, again, great cliche, honestly.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads you again back into episode 4, where Kino and Hayami are making their final push to Zorndike, while Blue number 6 is essentially in their final confrontation with Zerg. It's a parallel to each other. You're seeing conflict
it's all happening. Exactly.
It's insane.
And those submarine fights are actually fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
That's that one scene where the Blue 6 flips so that it's going lengthwise, and they shoot missiles up and down, and they hit both the Musakas coming at them. Oh my god, I was like, that was fucking awesome. That was beautifully shown.
I will say, though, and kind of gets into my critique of that, terrible CGI background. I don't know why they chose CGI backgrounding with that at the same time. So sometimes you would see that the scenery would switch to CGI backgrounding with 2D in the front, which I was like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
They were the experiment, it really hadn't been done. So if they didn't do it in a bad way, we wouldn't have known how to fix it.
But yeah, so actually before all this happens too is Katsuma actually gets broken out by Hayami. So Hayami ends up breaking Katsuma out of his containment and freeing him, which again, I don't know how he lived, but he did. So Katsuma actually helps guide Hayami and Kino to where Zorndike is staying in Antarctica. And I would like to say this right now. It felt like a Kevin Spacey moment where, we got this nice, cool Baby Driver action sequence. The music starts to kick up, and Hayami, the way he starts to drive, I was like, wow, this reminds me of Baby Driver. Just gotta point this out. Baby Driver. I'm gonna always say this every time. Baby Driver, greatest movie of all time. The kid can drive. The kid's got wheels. So you get this really good sequence of Hayami because again, Kino still keeps up this thing like I don't know if you're a good driver, and Hayami's like, can you just shut up and just let me drive? Shut up, let me drive.
Let me do my thing.
But you also, again, I'm sorry to the CGI. I don't mean to be the person who says CGI is awful, but you get the CGI sequence fight between Blue 6 and the Musakas. And wow, did that not look good?
I enjoyed it.
I respect that, and I respect that quite a bit. I love that you can openly say that, but for me, I was like, This would have just been better if it was 2D. If you just did this
Oh,
sequence
yeah.
in
I mean,
2D.
honestly, if you just did it in 2D, no, I'll give it to you there. It would have been a way better sequence. But I enjoyed it for because it was that when you looked at the submarine itself, it was that half 2D, 3D
Yeah,
look to
it
it.
almost like it almost felt off-putting. Again, not to say CGI is off-putting, but in this sense, it did
Yeah.
feel really off-putting and looked like I could have done it in Blender myself. But
So
um,
Hayami and Kino make it to Antarctica, and then they confront Zorndike,
yep.
and he's like a like he's a psychopath, but he's like kind of relaxed, got a smooth like voice to him and everything, and he's just kind of also like just kind of sounds like he's done with everything.
And what's interesting about him too is before all of this, we've been giving you the exposition that he's a scientist. You don't know he's an actual scientist until then, that he was the lead scientist for the team he was leading. And again, he was very good with eugenics, essentially.
Hmm.
But you see kind of the fruits of his labor with these. And again, you have the fish people, but then you have the anthropomorphic animals as well,
Yep.
who aren't fish people. But
The little cat
the
girl,
little cat
which clearly
girl,
is like his favorite, but then you get like the tree women
yep.
later near the crater, and like I'm just like, bro, what the fuck are you?
I
Like,
think and you know what,
why?
I can break down potentially what that is later, but it might have to do with symbology of religion.
Okay,
With some type of religious symbology where it's like the tree of life gives birth to, yeah, whatever.
okay,
you
yeah,
put you put a mythos there. It probably is supposed to symbolize that potentially. I don't
got
know,
it. Yeah,
but
only the creators do, you know.
and they speak Japanese, something we barely do ourselves. So we'll never understand.
Yeah.
Um, but you also learn a little fun fact, kind of going back to how Zorndike is an evil genius. He really fits that mold because he connected his heartbeat, to the earth. And you go, oh, that's not good, is it? And he's like, no, it is not good. If my heart
Yeah.
stops, it's going to shift the earth's crust even more.
No, he needed so the what happened was that he took his heart out and he connected it to a device that was going to power up and flip the continents or flip the
Gravitational pull or something. It was
yeah.
something, but I said
The
that's
shift, the flip the continental shifts, I think, something that was gonna like fuck up the rest of the world and officially kill out all the other humans living
and that's some
and
evil
some
genius
of
stuff.
his own creatures.
That's
Um,
some evil genius stuff. Let me tell you, that's some evil genius level shit.
yeah, dude. But what he found out was that he was so old, his heart wasn't enough to trigger the fucking device that he built to destroy everything. So his initial plan was he wanted Blue Six to nuke him because the nuke was going to be enough to like trigger everything.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially he was trying to lead Blue Six into destroying the rest of humanity.
Okay, I thought it was the opposite because in English it sounded like Zorndike said, "Well, if you kill me, you know, my heart is connected essentially to the Earth's crust, and if you kill me, that's going to cause a shift in how the Earth's going to function. So make your choice. Do
Yeah,
you
no,
kill
no,
me?
no. So it was a device that he built, but that whole crater he built straight down to I think it was the mantle. I forget how far down that
It
whole.
was farther enough where it was
Yeah, but
seismic.
his heart was in a device down there because when
Okay.
he shows him the giant hole, he's explain. Even in the dub, he explains that like, he's like, I built it, but I'm so old and like my heart's not strong enough, and so I need Blue Six. That's why they were so desperate to call
Mhm.
back to Blue Six, saying, do not nuke this place, don't do it."
Yep. So you kind of get into a battle of philosophies from here on out. It becomes more of a battle of philosophies between Kino, Hayami, and Zorndike.
Yeah, because
And
she wants to kill him.
yeah. And Hayami mentions how and we didn't say this in episode 3, but Hayami kind of goes through a moment where he says, "Is Zordite just testing us?" And he was, in a way, in his own sick way, he was testing
Mm-hmm.
humans, saying, can any human overcome their hatred for their enemy, essentially? Or can they push their differences aside to unite? And Hayami and Mutio become that perfect example of, two different creatures coming together to an understanding of one another. And so Hayami tells Zondek, you were just testing us. And he, essentially Zondek was like, yes, I was testing humans. And then he kind of goes into the whole thing about him losing his wife, his kids, what drove him to do this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was just exposition that we kind of already understood from episode 3, his motives. But Kino, as you said, wanted to kill him. And Jaime said, no. You. Because the other thing is, Kino is kind of innocent still. And in many ways, she's still
Yeah.
pure. And Hayami kind of tells her, it's like, in his own way, it's like, listen, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Don't
letting revenge take you over, it defeats the whole purpose of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we assume he ends up being the one who shoots Zorndike. He tells Kino to go radio Blue 6 to not nuke the island, like he said. And we assume he's the one who ends up pulling the trigger at the end of the day. So towards the end of the episode, at this point, we're basically at the end of the episode. Hayami, at the end of it, he's sad. He's really sad, but it's not really explicitly explained why he's sad about the ordeal. It could be for many reasons. For him, maybe having to take a life, because that's the first thing he says. This is the first time I've had to actually take a life, because by episode 3, he's come to the realization he didn't kill Katsuma because he was bound with that survivor's guilt. That he's the one who killed Katsuma. He got over that, but now in episode 4, after killing Zoindike, he talks to himself saying, I had to take a life. I killed. And it kind of seems like he's sad or despondent about it, because you're not too sure how you're supposed to take the way he's explaining it to himself. Hey, I killed him. It's like, well, you sad about it, or do you feel anything? Like I said, despondent. Is something wrong? But Verg shows up one last time.
Yeah, well, because real quick before we go into Verg showing up, it's with Zorndike. He was ready because he was gonna kill his own people too. The minute that he flipped the continental shift or whatever it was, or gravity, I forget what he was gonna flip. He was gonna flip something. I know it was a flipping motion.
Flipping the bird?
He wasn't expecting Hayama. So when in Kino, and when he saw and understood how Hayami saved Mutio, and that there might have been a chance, he had told him, but he still wanted to die. So before he died, he had been like, I need you to talk to
the rest of my people. Hey.
Yeah.
And that kind of again leads into Verg. I don't
Flipping
remember
the fuck out.
Yeah, he was not happy, and for good reasons. But it's kind of tough to explain this, because no one here is in the right in a way. Zordek definitely wasn't in the right. Hayami kind of isn't in the right either, nor is Verg. Everybody kind of feels like they're in the wrong in these situations. Mm-hmm. So you kind of just, and maybe that was the point, because Hayami ends up relaying a message from Zorndike to Verg saying, there's no point.
It's up to us.
It's up to us,
Yeah.
We have to be the ones to make the change ourselves, and
we're here, we need to coexist, and we need to find a way.
And that was Zorndike's last words.
Zerg flips the fuck out. He has a full mental breakdown, beats the ever living shit out of Hayami, and eventually, is it he stops
Yeah,
and
because
then
Kino shows up to protect Hayami one more time,
right.
kind of like,
Yeah.
which I guess you could say the Hayami Kino thing is supposed to reflect because Mutio ends up showing up at the end to
Mhm.
embrace Verg, who through all the bad things he's done to her.
Again with that ex-boyfriend type of
Yeah, still kind of.
character development that you had mentioned earlier in the episode.
That's why I kind of like towards the end, I was like, kind of feels like there's supposed to be a thing and a reflection to the Kino Hayami reflection. You
Mhm.
know, Kino is kind of like Zerg, very hot headed, wants to prove themselves, believes what they were doing was the right choice. And you kind of can see Verg, it's almost like his whole world was shattered. Not because just
Yeah.
Zorndike died, but because Hayami
Right.
was kind of proving him right that hate isn't going to solve anything.
Exactly.
And Verg flips out one more time saying, no, I don't want to accept that. But, you know,
He
he
does.
does. He kind of does because he embraces Mutio at the end, and that kind of felt more with love and compassion in his heart rather than hatred, kind
But
of like,
the anime does leave you off on that kind of sense of like, are they okay? Or is this just like a brief little like we'll mend things for now? Or like it leaves you off on that kind of like you said, a kind of like a cliffhanger?
there's
Like
supposed to be one more episode to
yeah,
seal
like
the
show the epilogue. Yeah, exactly.
and we didn't get that. So that's why I felt like, wow, this feels like it could. However, too, not to discredit anything, 4 episodes from a 3-volume manga, I'm
Yep.
not gonna be up in arms about them not fully finishing it. If even a quote, like you said, you told me that the manga didn't even feel fully completed. So
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna be like, wow, they didn't complete a half or not fully completed manga. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say, wow, they should have completed it. Well,
Yeah.
if you're trying to follow the source material and the source material isn't even done, then yeah, I'm not upset that it's not done. But at the end of the actual show, Shu, the guy that the girl that was with Zorndike, recites one more passage, the same passage he was reciting prior, from the Chronicles of Garia, I believe. And
Mhm.
honestly, I don't know if it was supposed to be a metaphor. This is the one point where I said, I feel like this is supposed to be a metaphor for something because he mentions a wife returning from the Ishi River, and I said, I don't know what that means. I don't know what this passage is supposed to mean, but I feel like it's supposed to be a metaphor. Um, Honestly, again, just a little side note because that's what it ended on. It ended on Shu
Yeah.
reciting that passage, and I said that has to mean something, right? This has to mean something. I'm not going crazy, am I? Like maybe
Let's
I.
call them. Let's get the creators on the Flashback Cartoon Hour.
Excuse me. What did you mean by this?
But all in all, what that since we're done with the final episode, what would you rate this series on a letter scale from F to A plus?
I'm gonna give you 2. My
Okay.
personally, this is like a C minus. Very felt underwhelming. It didn't feel fully completed. This is the personal side of me. Objectively, if we're gonna talk about objectively, this is like a B plus, very high B plus. Um, it's not perfect, but that's okay. It's an early 2000s, early 1999
Yep.
anime. It's did something completely different at the time. So a lot of credit goes to that. It used CGI in a way that was very innovative and different. It pioneered a lot of the innovation of CGI uses in video games and other animes going forward. So very high B plus in an objective point of view. Subjectively, I feel like this is just not a good anime. Like if you would ask me subjectively, not a good anime. But
Yeah.
we're talking about this from a more objective standpoint. Yeah, B plus, very high B plus. The pacing felt weird for the first 2 episodes. They didn't really establish the characters too well, but that's kind of overlooked because I feel like this was more. This wasn't really a character driven anime. I don't think this was a character
Yeah.
driven anime. This
No.
was more driven throughout. This was more driven. This was a more story driven anime than it was a character
Yeah.
driven anime.
It's
So
like a philosophy anime,
yeah,
really. It's like
very
makes you
philosophical.
think.
Very
Yeah.
philosophical. Makes you think. And that's good. I think that's very, like, to their credit, that is very good. Again, early 2000s anime, late 1990s anime, from a manga that wasn't even fully completed itself, or didn't have didn't have much of an ending anyways, very open-ended. So
Hmm.
I think they nailed it. CGI, again, kind of going back to a bullet point, CGI, hit or miss, hit or miss in some moments, but generally speaking, used in a very innovative way. So A+ for that. Story was about a A minus. Characters was like a C. So that's why I'm giving like
Yeah,
that's why I'm giving like a high
yeah,
B
yeah, yeah.
plus, because the characters were like all a C. Again, you get the peanut gallery in Blue Submarine No.6. Um, the only real characters that were important were, quote, Kino, Mutio, Verg, and Hayami. And even that Mutio kind of disappears at the end of episode 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So she kind of
Doesn't show up until the very end of episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it a. I think I'm gonna go with a B minus. No, I'm gonna go with a solid B. I'm gonna stick to the solid B I originally. After watching both the dub and sub, I just think if you're looking at it for at the time, like we have talked about throughout the episode, fantastic. If you're looking at it from a modern day perspective, it's dated, a lot of pacing issues, characters. You like the main characters. I feel like that's the important thing. So you like the ones that are the important ones. Um, and these are all just concepts that they came up with off of just generic characters from the original series. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with a B. The music was I like the music during the action sequences. Um, I thought the 2D animation was brilliant. The dubbing didn't bother me except for Verg.
Okay.
His voice gets to you after a while. You're like, all right. Oh, and the musica was goofy.
Yeah, so I guess that's another thing too, is like why I want to give it a high B plus is, though I feel like the music, again, subjectively just didn't work, from more of an objective standpoint, it was just good music. That, like, it was just good music as a whole. So
Yeah.
even though for me subjectively it didn't work, objectively just fantastic music. Just I feel like not for the right anime. Really good music, just not for the right anime. But considering that it was that, like, almost cowboy bebop style jazz,
Yeah, yeah.
it felt good to listen to. And
Yeah.
I think that also kind of comes into like another thing that I liked is how they started to blend, like again, Mutio's crying was blended into the music, or, you know, things like that. Like, hearing sounds being used throughout the soundtrack and musical scores, being blended in to that type of music, or how they used sound to basically create music. Very, very good usage. Again, just for me, just didn't fit. Not always, it always, sometimes it fits, sometimes it didn't, hit or
Yeah.
miss.
Yep.
You're either
Yep.
going to really
And
like
I
the,
totally get it.
but I think overall, yeah, I think, again, if we combine our scores, just overall, just a nice B.
Yeah.
It's a good watch. It's a short watch. Something that, if you're into older anime, this is something that might tickle that itch
You
perfectly.
can take it out in a full day if you want, it's not long, and that's kind of the perk of it. If it was stretched out, maybe it'd be worse, maybe it'd be better, we don't know.
I
But
think I think
oh no,
though.
continue.
No, I was gonna say I think though, it's like, if you were gonna critique this in any way, try and critique it from a more, if you were in the 2000s, like, don't be too harsh on it.
Yeah.
It's fine to,
Yeah.
like, have your own perspective like we do, but you gotta remember the time frame this is in. You gotta remember probably this probably wasn't a big studio work. Like, Gonzo probably didn't have too many people working on this.
Yeah.
So, try and be fair about, your perspective on the matter. You don't have to say, well, it's not modern, so it's trash. That's not true. If that was the case, then every anime from like 1990, 1980, 1970 would be trash. And in this day and age, we'd be calling everything trash. But try and view this more as this is a time capsule piece. This is
Yep.
this
Yep.
uh,
Perfect way to put it. And let us know your opinions in the comments to the episode. If you guys know of the series, if you were there when it aired, let us know how you feel about it. Give us your letter scores. Matt, it's been great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Dude,
Appreciate it.
anytime. I can't wait to have you on another episode. We can do like maybe Black Lagoon. This reminds me a lot of Black Lagoon, and that's another series that you got me into.
And this reminds me so much of, even like Full Metal Panic. I can feel the inspiration because this is the studio that did it. But even if you didn't watch, this, and you watch something like a Full Metal Panic, a Desert Punk, Salty
Yep.
Ray, Black Cat, any of those, you'd be like, huh, I wonder where this is from. This is where it's from. This is the studio. So if you're interested in this, give this a watch. I think if you're into something that'll make you think, this will make you think. It's a good piece for it. Just because, again, we had some gripes, I think it's just worth putting this into your repertoire. Anybody who likes anime, this is a good thing to put into your repertoire of things you've watched, so you can have it under your belt. But yeah, this really did remind me of Black Raccoon. Again, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person.
No. I
that
mean,
person,
that's a series you got me into. Maybe it's one me and you can cover on the show. What year did it come out? Do you know?
It came out, and I'm going to use the thing called Google because I'm so smart. I'm so smart,
That's free advertisement, Google.
Black. don't let that go to Google's head. That'll go there. That'll go to their head. Don't say that. 2006.
It's officially 20 years old.
It's officially 20 years old.
Would you want to do that or Desert Punk?
Oh, probably Black Lagoon. I can give you so much information about Black
Lagoon. I'll get back into watching them tonight. Once we're done.
It's so good. I swear to God.
Yeah. So Matt, thank you for joining us. Guys, you can check us out, the Flashback Cartoon Hour. We're on all podcast platforms. We're on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, the Flashback Cartoon Hour on all of it. Give us a like, a review. It helps us with the algorithms on all. And thank you guys for coming. Remember the 3 golden rules: fight pollution, save the planet, and as always, be good to yourselves.